Hello and welcome to the exciting unboxing of the Gotway Nikola 84 volt 1600, that's right, 1600 watt hours. This is getting higher and higher. So in the box you get your usual Gotway manual, which probably says a lot of things in Chinese, or not a lot of things in Chinese. 1.5 amp charger, 84 volt obviously, plug, which if you're ordering the EU, we will swap out for an EU plug. And with the addition of two lovely squishy side pads with that new side pad smell. Done. Let's have a look at the wheel. Oh my goodness, it's a biggie. That was easy. Ooh. Would you look at that? It's quite a thing of beauty, to be fair. If the table will hold up. Check that out, that's a wobbly table. When's someone going to send this? I've got a hat sent to me. When's someone going to send me a table? So, what have we got here? We've got a trolley handle. Look at that. Flicks up. So spring loaded up and down, so it forces its way up and it clips back. Oh, soft close. Oh, gotta get some B-roll of that, Mario. It's more soft close because the rubber just catching on the side there, which is quite nice. I like that. Okay, what have we got at the front? We have got 600 watt hours. We've got a USB port for charging your stuff. I never ever use that, to be fair. Some of you might. Power button, charge port, light. Oh, booted up. She's alive. Very good. What a massive wheel. Tyre. Massive tyre. And at the back, we've got a Gotway logo. So that looks good, as the brake light is the logo. And it's actually a little bit see-through. So where the lights are on, you can kind of see the internals of it as well. And then you got these, which look like the covers for the screws for taking off the side pads. And there's a lift sensor in here, as it beeps at you. So it doesn't spin when you pick it up. So that's a nice feature, that's for sure. Wow. What a beast. Okay, let's have a look at these foot plates. Ooh, different type of finish on them. It is kind of rubbery. That'll be interesting to see whether it actually grips or not when it gets wet. We'll find out, I guess, and they are massive foot plates as well. They look really nice. Feel quite sharp and grippy, so perhaps they'll be alright. You never know. Very good. And it closes against the sticker here. So you got the old sticker on there, which you've had before, that allows this to sit on it. Because this isn't sandpaper, that's probably going to be less of an issue. With the sandpaper ones, if you get them flat against the nice panels, they tend to grind and make scratch marks sort of along here. So that's going to stop that. Right, okay. Let me get this on the stand and have a quick look. I don't want to lie on its side. I don't want to wreck it. Got a handy stand here, sent in by Duff some while ago. Oh, this is so heavy. Pinch my fingers. Right, what's the tyre? Let's have a look at this. So it's a 16 by 3.0, so a really wide tyre. And it looks as though that's going to be not exactly 16, it's closer to 17 to me, by the thickness of that tyre sidewall. But yeah, nice tread, so it's like a multi-purpose tread, which the M Super X isn't multi-purpose, it's almost road design tread on the M Super X, which I've struggled with in the mud sometimes, but I ride it nonetheless. I haven't swapped it out. I still ride it. you just become a better rider, learn to find grip where you wouldn't usually find it. So this is multi-purpose, so should be a little bit better off-road and equally on-road, should be quite good. Probably should go out and test this on the road, shouldn't we? Let's take it outside. Let's start with the trolley handle. A couple of points. So we always tell it like it is. Really like the trolley handle. I actually do. There's been some people saying that they're not so sure about it. It doesn't lock in position, as I mentioned earlier. So it springs up and it holds there and then it springs back down again. But when you're pushing it, if you just lift up a touch as you're pushing it around, you can go forward or backwards with no issues whatsoever. I've tried that on cambers, so going across a camber. I've tried uphill, downhill, and I've been able to use it absolutely fine. So from that point of view, from usability, I found it to be absolutely fine. And the fact it's quickly accessible, it's literally as simple as that. With the M Super X, it's more clamped down, and it's more fitted in there, sort of fight the thing to get it up. And you bring it all the way up, and there's clunk clunk, and then it's pushing all the way down again, whereas this is a piece of cake in terms of usability. It's no struggle at all. So the mechanism there is spot on. The fact it's metal, spot on. Now obviously, if you have that up, or it flies up if you have a crash, now when you have a crash, you're always going to break something or scratch something, aren't you? If that flies up, the potential for that staying up, bit like the InMotion V10, is a chance that you could break this or bend it. But that applies to any trolley handle, but with the exception, like on the M Super X, it isn't going to suddenly, if you come off it, it isn't going to fly out because it's quite a stubborn little thing to get out in the first place, whereas this is more easily accessible. So there's always a sort of a bit of a trade-off. If this was really difficult to get out, people would complain that it's too tight and it's need to fix that and things like that. And then if it's like this, which is definitely isn't loose, you couldn't say it's loose. People are going to complain that it's too loose or too tight, and I think it sits just right. But if you do come off, then I think, I haven't come off, so potentially that could come out like that, just like on the V10. Now we, in terms of selling people trolley handles, we've never sold a V10 one, so it can't happen that often, but it's just a possibility, so I'm mentioning it. But the interesting thing is, if you did, there's actually bolts here to that side and to this side. So I think you can just slide that off and just slot another replacement in. So that is pretty sweet. In terms of replacing, you have to take the whole thing apart to get it to take the thing out, a bit like the Ninebot 1 E Plus used to have a body here, and the trolley handle used to break, and you have to take the whole thing apart to get to the trolley handle, whereas this is accessible here. So that's nice touch. One thing to mention is that dust gets over here. So I haven't been riding in rain, but this is just dust. I don't think mud will get up here, but the dust gathers on the bit that you touch with your hand. So if you're uber clean and not a dirty person like me, then when you come to raise this up to push it, if you're in the city, you're going to get dust on your hand, which is a little bit strange, I must admit. So it's actually sat underneath it and it's sat on the top of it. Definitely going to get dust on your hand. Have been through mud, haven't been through rain, so it hasn't been rain when I've been using this, but I've gone through mud and it hasn't splattered at the back or anything like that. It's just literally dust from a nice hot day, the trails, gunning along the trails, and there's dust flying up behind you, and it sort of gathers here and on the sides, as you'll see in the shots we're overlaying. And so that's sort of leads me on to the next one, which is you do get dust attracted to the side of these panels, which is not an issue at all. Apart from the fact, if you ride a lot of dusty trails, which some of you may not be doing, so if you're riding a dusty town or dusty trails, you might get this. And obviously in summer, this only really applies when it's dried out, the ground's dried out and you've got a lot of dust flying around. Your legs are obviously here, and with dust residue on here, if your legs are touching against it, you're constantly rubbing, you are going to get little scuffs on here. But you get into this wheel by knowing that it's got this piano gloss finish to it anyway, like the V10s, the V5s, Ninebot 1S2, all those sorts of wheels that are just, I call them bars of soap because they're hard to grip hold of. All those sorts of wheels with a glossy type of nice finish as this and looks as sexy as this, you're going to find that you're going to get scuffs on it. But the dust does stick to it. Perhaps you can get some anti-static spray or something, put it on there if you're really concerned about that. Don't know, maybe, possibly. I wouldn't bother. One brief thing to mention, that if you're off-roading this, quite rough off-road, pretty sure it does that. So if you're, I mean, I'm talking serious off-road here. I mean, part of the problems with forums and saying things out loud is you could take it as it always does it. I'm talking extreme off-road, bouncing along, down steps and the like, something like that, that sort of judder, that jolt. I've heard that doing that. As you do that, dunk, 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 you can hear that sort of jumped up, just a touch. So it's a bit of a rattle from that if you're doing extreme off-road. If you're not touching any of that, you'll probably be fine, unless you hit a load of consecutive potholes or something. Then I'm pretty sure it's that. I'm not 100% sure, because I've got no real way of telling. It's quite difficult to look down whilst travelling on extreme off-road and looking to see what's going on. So I can't really tell. It sounds just like that though. It's like that sort of sound. So that's the other thing. Once something's not locked in position, there's always a payoff. Obviously it can move because it's there for ease of access. And with that ease of access comes a bit of a price on that. But I really like that trolley handle. I haven't got any issues with it at all. It's been absolutely fine. Say, as long as you just apply a tiny bit of pressure as you're pushing it, you can't just push down on it. If you push down on it, obviously it does that. But if you're holding it and pulling up slightly as you push it back or forward, spot on. The handle part section here is, unless you've got giant hands like the Mountain of Game of Thrones, you're not really going to be able to. You can lift it fine, but you can't just put one hand underneath it, over the top like that, should I say. You have to come in underneath and carry it, which is fine. It's quite a heavy wheel, but it does work as a handle, but sort of one-sided. You're almost carrying it off 50%. You're not grabbing the whole thing, like on the V10 or the V8, where you put your hand round it and you pick it up, or the M Super X even, where their top part is about that thick. Whereas with this, because it's so wide, so all it is a change of use. So you put your hand underneath it. It's not like some inherent design flaw, because you don't have to pick it up like this. You just put your hand underneath it and carry it. One thing to mention, now it appears to be only with this one I took out the box. It happened to be the first one out of the batch. As you'll see in this overlaid video now, it hasn't quite been put together right. There's one little corner not tucked in on this plate. Now I can feel underneath it there's actually two micro switches. So that's one side. You can hear it clicking. And this other side, you can, but you have to force it past a certain point. So there's actually a micro switch each side, it would appear. Now I haven't had an issue. I've tested this and I've picked it up both ways round and it just works. And I think it's because of the sheer weight of it, it actually activates that micro switch. So that hasn't been a problem at all, but that isn't right. Now we've checked other units and they're fine. So it just appears to be this one where someone hasn't checked that, and they need to do a check on that before they start boxing them up and shipping them out. Really hasn't caused any issues, won't cause any issues, but it should really, to be 100% right, should be tucked in there properly. So as you can see, we've got both side by side. You can see what it should be like and what ours is like. But there we go. That will be a check that we'll introduce on the ones we're shipping out from now on. That's why we unbox them. That's why we test these things live, as it were, to see where everything's at. So we will always check that before we ship them out. So if you buy from us, you won't get that like that, that's for sure. But there we go. Moving on to foot plates. These, I say, hasn't been tipping down with rain, but I've got mud on the bottom of my shoes from being on trails and things like that. Haven't slipped once. It's been absolutely fine. So there was some talk about the fact, obviously, they switched from the grip tape, skateboard grip tape, so sandpapery finish, to a rubber type finish with little spikes in it, tiny little spikes. They've gripped my shoes absolutely fine. I've been wearing Skechers for reference, whether that helps, soft sole. They really stick to it. So I've had no issues with that. And I've been across all different types of terrains. So from that point of view, no problem at all. Not soaking wet. So We'll find out in rain, but it feels really grippy at the moment in comparison to all the other wheels I've ridden. Thumbs up in terms of that finish. We'll see how it wears, if these little squares wear off. But then it's the same as grip tape with a skateboard tape on there, isn't it, really? That wears off, you need to replace it. So we'll see how well it wears. I should imagine it should wear better than sort of sandpaper finish. The size of the footplate, spot on. My foot ache was minimal, so after 2 hours I get bits of aches like you do, but it wasn't happening within 5 or 10 minutes. It was actually really, really comfortable. And they're magnetic, so they're held on with magnets like the good old way, so nice and free movement up and down. No restriction there for opening and closing them. Haven't duffed the foot plates into the ground at all yet. It's bound to happen, isn't it? But at the moment they're pristine still, like it had never been ridden, so that's all good. I've got no marks coming on the side of here. That sticker's doing its job, it's holding back that, so that's good. They've been up and down, up and down, up and down. That's been absolutely spot on. In terms of the firmware and how it responds to tilt back, that is nice and delicate. It's very comfortable. It doesn't suddenly jolt back. Not on the speed warning nor on the low battery warning. Very, very comfortable. There's no surprises there. That they seem to have nailed completely. So you get suddenly come into a low battery when you're going up a hill. It doesn't go boom, slow down. It actually just slowly tilts you back and lets you know you need to start taking it steady because you're on a low battery. So it performed really well. As you saw, I got down to 0% battery apparently, but ridiculously low battery, and it behaved really, really well and safely. So I was finding that that tilt back was happening and it was slowing me right down to a speed that if it did just turn off, which it's not going to do, but if it did, it's so slow that you just step off it. So it's handling it really, really well, and at a lower, it seems to be at a lower percentage than it was previously, and the other models that they do were previously. So that's also spot on. The stickers have stayed on because they had stickers like this that were on the MCM5, and they would just peel off all day long. Every day you get on it. But as Mary did in the review of the MCM5, he was mentioning that actually when you start riding it every single day, twice a day, your feet being on there, sticking them back on. My concern was these aren't down where your ankle are to push them back in, but they haven't peeled off at all, so they didn't arrive peeled, and they didn't peel off. I have done 30 miles, I'm just getting the beat. So it's reading 20% uphill. If I back off a little bit, no problem. So I'll probably get to about 32 miles. Ooh, bumpy. 32 miles for the beat, I suspect. Weirdly, it's not beeping at me even though it's on 5%. If I push forward a little bit, then it starts beeping. We're on 4% battery now. 4% battery and in the middle of nowhere. So I'm really hoping this gets me back. Now showing 3% battery. 2% battery. I will keep on reporting. So reading 0% battery at the moment. I'm looking, you may notice I'm not in the Gotway app. That's because the Gotway app doesn't report battery for some reason, hasn't since I've connected to this Nikola. So I'm using Ninebot to get the battery, which would appear not to be accurate because if it's 0, I wouldn't be riding along. So it's probably just getting the reading from the wheel anyway, rather than being Ninebot itself at fault, but it can't be 0% because I'm still moving. Okay, so now it is really tilting me back now. This is I'm going really slow. This is incredibly slow. Probably about 3 or 4 miles an hour. So I'm hoping I'll get back home. That might be a bit of a tall order. Probably got about another 2 miles approximately. So it seems to tilt back at 5%, if that's accurate. I can only look at the Ninebot app to try it out, because the Gotway app isn't working. So it would appear to do tilt back at 5% battery and the beeping at 5% battery. Usually it's 20%. Maybe something's changed? I don't know. But anyway, it's beeping according to Ninebot at 5% and then doing the tilt back as well. Thankfully, I'm rolling downhill here, so that's good. As you can probably hear, I got mud stuck inside it. Like you get with the V10. Such a big tyre and so close to the shaft. Once you get leaves and stuff, it's gone very dark in here. Once you get leaves and stuff and stacked up in there, it rubs on the inside. Good thing is, once you blast it out along a nice straight road, it's all sorted. Oh, almost at the end of this trail now. In fact, the sound is now gone already. Mud's already out. Well, we're in civilization again now. And thankfully, another bit of downhill. So the beeping has lessened. Thank goodness. So embarrassing in town. Let's go beep, 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 beep. Right, we are back at work. Let's find out the total distance travelled. Obviously it's still moving. It's still moving. What could I push out of it more? Oh, don't know. A mile maybe? Maybe? But let's tally up what the distance is. Well, I got 35.5 miles out of it. Probably 70% road, 30% off-road, temperature around about 15 degrees C, rider weight about 14 and a half stone. Go and work that out, what that is in kilograms. Probably put it on the screen now, in fact, for you, to save you doing that. And that's the distance I got out of it. So I'm probably going to do another range test because I got more out of the M Super X than I did this, and they're the same size batteries, but obviously not the same size wheel. So I think, I can't remember, I have to go and check, but I think I got about 42 miles with a little bit to spare possibly on the M Super X. So quite a bit of a difference. So I will do another range test. I'll recharge the battery, cycle them once and give it the benefit of the doubt and try it again and see if I get a similar distance. The braking and the acceleration and the way it handles that within the firmware is also incredibly comfortable. Yeah, very responsive, so as you'd expect to have a sort of 16-inch wheel, cracking on for a 17-inch wheel. Just lean forward, it accelerates. It's not like you're riding the monster where you have to lean right forward to get the thing moving. Very, very responsive. And braking the same, so you lean back, it brakes nice and sharp, it accelerates nice and sharp. So the handling is an interesting one, so it feels a bit different to the closest comparable probably is the V10, except from this beats it on weight. It's a lot heavier. Because it's a 16-inch and not an 18-inch, so if I compare it, because it's a 1600 watt hour, if I compare it to the M Super X, which is a 1600 watt hour, if you've got the 84 volt version, you're going from an 18-inch down to, which is almost a 19-inch, down to a 16-inch, which is almost a 17-inch. So this weight is all brought down quite dense, I found. So it's quite difficult to explain, but it's not as wide open as the M Super X. You're riding a much bigger wheel, and it handles the off-road completely different than this does. So I found this, as I say again, like a bar of soap. From that point of view, your handling off-road is more difficult than it would be on the 18-inch wheel, almost 19-inch. So if you're going to be doing a lot of off-road, don't pick this. So if you're talking 70% off-road, 30% road, I would go M Super X. So from that point of view, that's kind of where we're at in terms of the handling off-road. Roads are absolutely fine. It feels really, really nice on the road, nice and planted. The weight is a big advantage on the road because it just sits so nicely. But there is a caveat to that because it comes with the side pads. So off-road, you can put the side pads here and you're gonna have a lot more leverage on the road to be able to control, on off-road, and be able to control it more. So the side pads, if you want to go off-road, you could put the side pads on, which I don't want to do because I kind of think it ruins the look. It's quite a nice shape at the moment and I think it looks really nice. The side pads then will give you more control But of course, because of the dust build-up, if you're going to put them on after you've gone out for a nice long ride on the dustiest trail known to man, then make sure you clean this down before you apply them. Otherwise, they're going to keep peeling off. So if you think you're going to need those side pads on, stick them on when it's nice and shiny and new, so you don't have to worry about the dirt getting underneath and wrecking your pads, sticking them on there. So you could probably get away with, what I'm saying is you could probably get away with off-road if you put the side pads on. Definitely can ride it off-road without the side pads on. Again, it's difficult when you're explaining things. You can ride more or less anything off-road or on-road, regardless of weight and size, but some things are a lot easier. So it'd be a lot easier if you've got the side pads on when you're riding off-road than not having them on. The speakers are actually pretty good quality, to be fair, considering they're crammed into a wheel. This thing, if we remember, we're sort of losing our bearings really on where these things are supposed to fit into our lives. And this originally, last mile commute was the idea, wasn't it? And then Gotway keep pushing the amount of power that they're putting into these things and the range, and they've always been spot on with that. Massive batteries, massive power, build quality, who cares? That's typically been the way it is. Now this, from the early days of Gotway, this is like a sea change completely. It's completely different. Amazingly built wheel in many respects. Is it perfect? It's not perfect, but in many respects is just massively improved. So it looks really good. Have they nicked their design cues off other people? Possibly. But nonetheless, it looks good, and it's crammed in 1600 watt hours of battery. So the closest looking thing is the V10, which I mentioned a few times. It's not 1600 watt hours. And so you've kind of got that mix going on with power and range, battery power. So when I do the range test on these, always the same. And we get the same questions each time. Why do you get such low range figures? It's because, one, I gear up fully and break the golden rule of going faster than you can possibly sprint at. But that's just for the range test. And so it's more or less a minimum range you're going to get, with the exception if you rode just like me, but you were heavier, then you're going to get less, obviously, because you'll be carrying more weight. But otherwise, you should all get more range. You should be pleasantly surprised. But this is the minimum range, so this is what we would go by. So with the range this offers, you're going to get about 2 hours worth of riding if you hack the thing around. And that's quite a lot of riding. And so if you're doing 2-3 miles into work and 2-3 miles back, you've got we've got a week's worth before you have to charge it, kind of thing. So it's a lot of battery power crammed into a nice looking unit, and actually it does feel well built. There's always rough edges with every single wheel. You open them up, you start to see things that you think, they could have done this better. But as it is, where we are so far, it's performing absolutely fine. I will go into the range test in a second, but the build quality, and we'll basically is spot on for externally. And because we do the 1,000 kilometer range test, so we do the unboxing and then we do the 250, 650 and 1,000, this gives us that scope to actually fully give you a feedback on the wheels, all the wheels we're doing. So there may be many things online that say this is brilliant or this is terrible, but this is why we do these tests. So we'll see how this performs over 1,000 kilometers and just see what happens. So I'm intrigued to see, with this dust buildup, for instance, will that result in loads of scratches or not? Don't know, we're about to tell you. My theory would be that it will get scratched on the sides where your legs are, but we'll find out and know for sure actually in practice. The tyre feels absolutely spot on, so we've inflated to the maximum PSI as per sidewall, and that sits and holds the road quite nicely. It's almost close to having that wandering thing like the Z10's got, but not quite. It's just not quite doing what that Z10 does, which is wander. I have tried it, I've run it along tram lines to see if it does. I had a couple of little things where I was like, woo, that's kind of twitched a little bit. But on the whole, apart from those 2 instances, I've had no problems with it at all. And I thought, oh no, please don't be like that. But actually it doesn't. If I tried to force it along some tram lines, it doesn't follow them, and it's been absolutely fine. Takes the bumps quite well because of the nice big tyre sidewall.
Well, I set out at 7:30 p.m. and I arrived back at 10:30, just gone past. Apart from a stop for some sandwiches, I've been out all that time and it's done 40 miles. It was showing 0%, but I've been sat here working out the mileage and it's gone back up 9%. So I might get another 2 or 3 miles out of it, I suppose. What? But those speeds would be reduced because it's obviously beeping at you and it's such a low battery percentage that it slows down your top speed. Anyway, that's the second test done with more mileage.
With both range tests, I've had the LEDs, the side LEDs on. Now you could turn those off to eke a bit more range out of it, but don't forget their minimal power use. But nonetheless, they are coming from the main battery pack. The first 8 miles of the range test, the first one, it was night time. So I had the front light on. So I can feed back on the front light as well. It was nice and widespread, so I was on a single track lane. So probably a sort of like, you might just squeeze 2 cars on it kind of thing, side by side. That's the spread, to give you an idea. And it was right out, so I could see both hedgerows and I see straight ahead. Now all these wheels pretty much suffer with the fact that when you're going up a real steep hill, the light's shining here, isn't it? So you really want it shining up here. I want to see a day when they make these lights adjustable based on what the firmware knows where it is. So it could actually put the light in the optimum position all the time. So that obviously it's going to be quite expensive in comparison to just lobbing a bulb in there. But we could do with a system which actually moves and puts it in the optimum position for where you're traveling, basically. That would be quite nice. But that isn't a criticism of this one, it's a criticism of all the ones with fixed lights. You're always going to be pointing at the hill rather than up and beyond the way you're going. So absolutely fine, basically bright enough. I remember the days when I didn't used to have a light included. You had to carry a head torch or strap one on a massive thing. So that works fine. It's no different really to the M Super X. Same sort of thing. Shines the same. The rear light, that's great. Red light, what more can I say? It's a brake light and it's a rear red light. The only thing in the UK, they can be a bit funny about these sorts of things. So having GW written on it could be potentially an issue. Really just want a nice plain light without a logo on there. I mean, they could have lit up this logo, couldn't they, for instance, if they really wanted to show off the Gotway logo. It would have been extra wiring, extra money nonetheless, but it would be nice to have a plain rear light. That's personal opinion. Just for the fact that legislation wise, it's good just to have a red, white at the front, job done. Both really, really bright. You can see someone coming, you know, it's not a problem, it's safe. And the side lights are brilliant for if you're traveling on promenades and stuff and there's people around, they can see you coming blooming miles off. And it does actually show as well on the front and back. So it's not like it's contained just to the side, like some wheels are. Like a Ninebot, that rear light ring, that just shows on the side, so you literally have to be looking at side on to be able to see it. Whereas these actually show on the front. And all the way around, I quite like the fact it travels all the way around in a full circle. It's not cut off at the bottom for where the foot plates are and stuff. The valve is on the tyre is easily accessible if you've got an extension. That massively helps. So a lot of people struggle with these because these units are so compact. Accessing the valve to pump it up, but this was straightforward to pump up really. Valve sticking out, extension makes it easier. Get an extension if you want one. We do them on the site, 160mm extensions. Yeah, that's pretty much it really. So we'll see how we get on over the next 250 kilometers. We'll feed back and let you know where we're at. But if you've got any questions, comments or concerns, then put them below. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell notification and always be notified of everything we've got coming out. And if you go to Instagram, Twitter and Facebook, then we have little behind the scenes stuff. We send photos, like we've been talking about this over the last weekend really, about what we're doing with it, putting it on charge, come on and all that sort of business. So you can go and like those and follow along and get links and you get offers and deals and stuff like that. So go and follow all those social channels. They'll be linked below because Mario put them in there because he's good like that. And keep you updated. Cheers guys.